So Dragonflight is now a few weeks old, and I've been putting in a bunch of hours since launch checking out the new expansion. You know, a few months before it was due to release, I was there thinking that this would be the version of World of Warcraft for the first time that I wouldn't pre-order and end up playing on launch, but with so many promises made and gameplay direction changes, it ended up getting me interested, because since Legion, the formula that World of Warcraft had been leaning into had been growing more and more sour. Whilst personally I liked Legion a lot, and I think many players did, it really was the root of many of the problems. Excessive time gating on content, requirements to farm daily and weekly content for currencies, grinding and regrinding content for a chance at a Titan Forge or a lucky legendary, a lack of account-wide progression on key expansion features, and activities turned into weekly chores such as islands in BFA or Torghast in Shadowlands. Dragonflight does away with, well, all of that, and for the first time in many years it's more of an accessible, casual-friendly, and perhaps most importantly, alt-friendly experience than it's been in a long time. And I'm happy to see retail WoW move into what many people are accepting as a more positive direction, shedding a lot of the design decisions from the past, which have been turning the game into a list of chores, not something fun you do in your free time. And a lot of the complaints I'm hearing about Dragonflight initially are, it's just different from Classic. You don't like the new dragon race, it's too cartoony graphics-wise and how they set out quests. It feels too much like a theme park with lights and explosions, and it's more of a single-player lobby game, not one of these real MMOs, which means, yeah, you're not gonna like the game, and that's okay because Classic exists. It's similar to when people compare old-school RuneScape to RuneScape 3. Many people just don't like the new game because it's different from the old game. It's changed direction, it's catering to a different audience, it's not the thing they grew up with, and they can't forgive the developer for developing the game beyond each boar taking 30 seconds to kill. If there was no alternative, I would see where this is all coming from, but there is. Classic WoW is a thing, it's right there, you can go and log into it today if you prefer that style of game. Blizzard did it, it exists, you won, they made it. If you have consistently not liked retail's direction for several expansions in a row now above just the game's features, that's probably not going to magically change whatever they do, and I think it's important they do remain fundamentally different experiences. I don't want Classic to completely copy every retail feature or vice versa. They each need to do their own thing to make them unique, or we'll just end up with this one strange World of Warcraft hybrid which doesn't really stand out one way or the other. For instance, I like revisiting the old raids in Classic, some of which I heard a lot about but never did them fully all the way through back in the day. I like how classes play in Wrath, and I just enjoy being in Northrend. It's a comfy place to be for me. Retail, by comparison, has loads more side content at level cap, storylines I haven't seen or heard before, though hopefully in a better way than Shadowlands, and I know that if I get properly into raiding, there will be progression content, something that doing a hard mode recently for Ulduar on the PTR made me realise I missed quite a bit. Anyways, that's my little piece on Classic versus Retail for the video, so let's get on to talking what's setting Dragonflight apart from any other version of World of Warcraft since a Legion, I would say. I know it's a pretty cliche thing to start off with, but the art team over at Blizzard have done it once again. The zones in this expansion look amazing. They're expansive, they're cinematic, and for a lack of a better term, have some open areas with not a lot in them. In many zones in the past, it felt like there was an active effort to min-max some kind of point of interest into every 100 yards or so, but with Dragonflight having flying as a big important feature from the moment you begin the expansion, this just wouldn't have made as much sense. But in general for World of Warcraft, if you can rely on one team to always do great, it's always been whoever is in charge of the art and style direction for the game, which really leads on to one of Dragonflight's biggest new features, dragon riding. And to be honest, this is the one thing which ties everything together for me. It makes having these big open zones work, it makes traveling around the game feel better than it literally ever has, and it just adds some scale back into World of Warcraft. You know, when I first heard of dragon riding, I was really skeptical of it as a key expansion feature. I thought it was going to be similar to how flying was in original TBC. Just imagine as it was back then, you finally hit level 70, you go to the Flight Master, fork out some gold, and you can finally fly above Outland. You can see everything from the skies, and then a few hours later you wonder, what is there actually to do in this expansion though? But dragon riding just works. It takes flying mounts from these very plain, static, boring objects into something which is agile and actually entertaining to use rather than just being a means to go between point A and B. When I log into Wrath Classic and do the flight from the top of Dalaran down into Dragonflight, man is it such a huge downgrade. There's no way Blizzard can go back from having dragon riding in every expansion going forwards now. I will say though, when you're first starting it off and you only have a couple points in your vigor stat, moving about can be pretty slow, but work on the Dragon Glyph collection as you go about the zones and it gets better pretty fast. Oh, and the progression you make with the Dragon Glyphs is account wide too. No regrinding on alts. Speaking of alts, leveling is fast in Dragonflight, like super fast. Even without stacking excessive amounts of buffs, I did levels 50 to 60 in literally a couple of hours after doing about half of the Krasarang Wilds and a few dungeons. Using Chromie time, you can go back to any expansion and quest there too. This is great for people like me who enjoy pretending Shadowlands didn't happen. In terms of levels 60 to 70, it definitely takes quite a bit longer, but still considerably faster than 70 to 80 in Wrath Classic would be by comparison. I was doing my standard first Lore Master playthrough leveling, and I hit cap midway through the Azure Span, which is the third zone out of 4. The storyline for the actual questing was okay. I wasn't blown away by it, I didn't hate it, it was kind of in the middle for me. I do like the whole us versus the elements thing that's going on in the current tier though. It reminds me of the start of Cataclysm versus the Twilight Hammer, and those were good times for me. Compared to trudging through them all on foot though, yeah, it's certainly an improvement over that. Though I will say we don't know who the big bad is at the moment. I mean, we've got to have a big bad, it's World of Warcraft, isn't it? Will one of the seemingly friendly black dragons go crazy? Will Nosdormu become Morozond? Will somebody go and res Deathwing? Don't know, to be honest, but a lot of interesting space for speculation. Right then, on to the big one, class design. It's different from how it's been for, well, a very long time. Obviously, whatever you do, there will be cookie cutter builds which mathematically prove superior on any given encounter, but in Dragonflight you can experiment a lot. You can run a full AoE build, or a single target one, or a terrible build which you put together yourself and doesn't make any sense. These are the largest talent trees we have ever seen in World of Warcraft, and really getting to grips and understanding the strengths of both your class and spec can set you apart in a big way. It can be quite overwhelming though. In fact, I think copy-pasting a build as a starter point isn't even a bad idea, because some specs, such as Arcane Mage, pretty much need a PhD to play correctly as far as I can tell. It's funny to imagine in Classic how Arcane plays, where you're pressing 2 buttons, and then in Retail, it's one of the most complicated specs in the game. Class balance is still quite up in the air as well. Blizzard have recently pushed quite a large balance patch onto the PTR, and with talent trees this big, it's very much going to be an ongoing effort. Oh, and in case you're wondering, here's what 90th percentile passes look like in the current raid tier on Heroic. Imagine that, all 3 rogue specs at the top, and trust me, that's not where you want to be this early in the expansion. Also, enhancement is actually good. This isn't Blizz-like at all. I'm sure they will change things so either locks or mages are on top soon enough. They usually do. Again though, I just thought I'd show this for fun. This is based off very little data, so changes will happen. Anyways, perhaps the biggest win of this change in class design is the fact you have access to about 95% of the stuff which your class can do right now. The only thing you'd need to go and farm as a temporary power gain will be your tier set. There's no artifact power, azerite power, legendary RNG grind though, or anything of the sort. On the topic of upgrades and gear though, professions have become a much more relevant source of those things. There's tiers to crafted items to increase their quality. There are several new stats which have an impact on your craft. You can add additional items to increase chance of having a better quality item. There's special profession gear to improve your skill. You can spec into niches within your craft, such as armor smithing or weapon smithing once again, and a lot more. In fact, it's kind of hard to get your head around it all initially when you're starting off, but I'd say it's better than a level profession X to level Y for Z bonus and then forget about it for the remainder of the expansion. Also worth a mention, you can solo queue for PvP now and work towards seasonal rewards, so if needing a group or lack of ability to commit to a schedule was a problem before, well, it won't be now. You can just jump in and get going. Another interesting upcoming feature is the trading post. It's currently on the PTR and will be an in-game shop offering, and I quote here, "The trading post will also include cosmetics from promotions that are no longer available, as well as items normally available for cash purchase on the in-game store as purchasable items with traders tender instead. This provides an alternative way for players to obtain these items." So what they're saying is you can get just about anything off of this shop for doing stuff in-game. Seems pretty good to me. This tender you buy items with, what's that though? Well, you gain 500 a month for free for being subscribed, and up to a further 500 more for completing a traveler's log, which is a random set of in-game activities which we currently don't know everything about. If you're a collection enjoyer and have always had to cross promotional stuff off of various lists because you knew you could never get them, well, now you can, whenever they appear on the shop, that is. Oh, and the stock rotates on a monthly basis, so plenty of time to get on and buy what you want. I feel like people are going to start ranting about FOMO on this update, but it's a choice between items which are available for a month straight and purchasable through an in-game currency, or nothing. Until Blizzard adds the Battle Pass, of course, including 1,000 extra tender per month. I'm semi-joking, I think. Anyways, let's move on, because as much as I enjoy Dragonflight, there's one thing which is stopping me playing more endgame, and that's personally not wanting to commit to a raiding schedule in Classic and Retail at the same time, and with Alder expected to be released sometime in January, I'm kinda just going to be sticking with that. I've played World of Warcraft and many other MMOs for a while now, and I've come to realise I'm full-on allergic to pugging content in games. If it requires some or any degree of coordination, a static guild is just infinitely better than pugging. Trying to learn content with a rotating door of strangers will inevitably be frustrating and is just a poor game experience. I've put myself through it enough times to know that it's not worth the effort in the end. Even if your class is fun to play, depending on randoms who you aren't talking to and will probably never see again, just isn't worth your time. And if you do pug on Retail, there's no raid lockout, so you can kill a boss as many times as you want, but you can only loot it 1 time per week, so people are really fast to hop groups in the chance they land with a good one. The extent of difficulty in puggable content for me has to be so low you basically can't get it wrong, like Wrath of the Lich King or Retail Heroic Dungeons. That's how the pug world is in World of Warcraft though, and it's not going to change anytime soon. This is how things are if you can't commit to a guild though. It's not necessarily a fault of the game, it's down to me. If I wanted to move up to harder content, I would absolutely find a static guild. For me, the big attraction to World of Warcraft is the raiding scene. That's consistently been the main reason that I play the game. And if I'm not raiding, I'm basically a mega casual. This is going to be almost entirely the deciding factor on how much I play Dragonflight, and MMOs simply take a lot of time, and I know retail progression on Mythic is infinitely more time consuming than classic raids are. It is what it is. All that being said, Dragonflight's in a very good spot. If they could just add in some more of that challenging solo player content, such as Brawler's Guild or Mage Tower, that would really push me as somebody who's currently more in it for the solo experience to want to play their character more, experiment with my ults, and generally push gear. And yes, really, I'm asking for more solo stuff in an MMO. This is one of the ways Retail is different from Classic in that it caters more towards this playstyle, and has done for a long time. Again, the two games are different, they don't need to be the same. All in all, we're still very early on. Who knows what the future patches will bring? Will there be an enormous content drought? Will Blizzard do something crazy? Or will they continue on down a path towards what seems to be a very solid expansion? We just don't know. Maybe things do go downhill in the future, but if you wanted to give Retail a go, now is really one of the best states it's been in for a very long time. That's about all I've got today. If you're giving Dragonflight a go, let me know your thoughts on it so far. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one very soon.